Adobe, Chinyere, and the other village girls catwalked gracefully across the stage at the beauty pageant, swaying their hips slowly, seductively, enchanting the crowd with their poise and dazzling feminine curves. The audience cheered and whistled, mesmerized by their beauty. But little did they know, this grand event, organized by none other than Esther, had a hidden agenda. You see, Esther wasn't doing this for the love of beauty or to crown a village queen. No, she had her eyes set on something far more personal: a Brazilian butt lift surgery, popularly called BBL. This entire show was a clever scheme to raise money for her dream behind. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this hilarious tale of what some ladies will go through just to look perfect. And don't forget to subscribe, as you will laugh through the outrageous twists and turns of Esther's adventures. In Umuoka village, Esther is impressed with the financial success of her two city cousins, Monica and Kosi, popularly called Coco. They flaunted their flashy lifestyle. They had just arrived from Lagos for the holidays, and their extravagant tales of life in the big city were like music to Esther's ears. Monica tossed her hair, adjusted her designer glasses, clearly enjoying the attention, and said, "Esther, you should see the men in Lagos. They practically shower us with gifts. I mean, last week, one man bought me a whole iPhone 16 just because I smiled at him." Coco chimed in with a smirk. "If you want these Lagos big boys to notice you, there is one thing you must have: a big backside. Trust me, once you have that, you are set for life. Just look at us." Esther's eyes darted from Monica's curvy figure to Coco's well-shaped backside. She sighed heavily, staring down at her own slim frame, and said, "But how do I get one? I want to be rich and live in Lagos like you." Monica and Coco exchanged knowing glances and said, "BBL, my dear, BBL." Monica said to Esther, "Brazilian butt lift is all the trend in Lagos. You will be unrecognizable, and the men won't stop spending on you." Esther's heart raced. A BBL? The idea filled her with excitement, but then came the crushing reality: she didn't have money for such a surgery. Still, the thought of becoming as admired as her cousins was too tempting to ignore. That night, as she lay on her bed, Esther began plotting. She needed money, and fast. A few days later, Esther set up a small store selling what she called special herbal drink for height increase. She confidently stirred a thick green concoction, calling out to young short ladies to buy and grow tall so they can attract male suitors for marriage. "Come and buy if you are tired of being short. This is your solution. Drink this, and in just 7 days, you will grow taller." The first few customers were young women from the village, all eager to gain a few more inches. One of them, a short lady called Akonwa, looked at the bottle skeptically and said, "Are you sure this will work? I'm already 28 years. Can I still grow taller?" Esther smiled, her sales pitch smooth as butter, and she said, "Of course, Akonwa. This herbal drink is different from anything you have ever seen before. It will activate your growth hormones, even if you are over 30. Akonwa bought a bottle and also invited her friends to buy more bottles of the potion. And for a moment, Esther felt like she was truly on her way to Lagos to perform the cosmetic BBL surgery. But after a week, Akonwa and her friends returned to Esther's shop. Akonwa was furious, and she screamed angrily, "Esther, I finished the drink. but nothing happened. I'm still the same height. Akonwa's friend, who had also bought the herbal drink, said, "My feet feel swollen, and I think it's because of that nonsense you sold to me." The ladies began to murmur, and soon Esther looked at them condescendingly and replied, "Is it my fault that you girls are short engines?" "What?" shouted Akonwa. "What did you just call my friends and I?" Esther repeated herself. "I said you girls are short witches. That's why my product did not work for you. Please take your stunted legs away from my shop. Don't bring bad market for me this morning." Akonwa and other women rushed Esther and almost beat the life out of her. Esther found herself running for her life. They chased her, raining insults on her fake herbal medicine. Esther barely escaped alive that day. Despite the setback, Esther wasn't ready to give up on her dream of going to Lagos to get BBL surgery and attract Lagos big boys. Her next plan was amazingly crafted. Esther organized a village beauty pageant with the promise that the winner would be flown abroad to become a model for brands like Gucci and Louis Vuitton. She told them that a white man was coming to witness the event and take the winner to New York for modeling jobs. The registration fee for the pageant was high, but the girls of Umuoka village were so desperate for fame that they happily paid. The pageant day arrived, and it was a sight to behold. Girls paraded in colorful wrappers with their heads high, hopes even higher. Adobe, one of the contestants, winked at the crowd as she catwalked down the runway, while Chinyere, another girl, twirled dramatically in her colorful dress. Esther stood to the side, beaming with pride. She had even hired a man with albinism from the next village to pretend to be a fashion scout. The man sat awkwardly in the corner, wearing oversized sunglasses. The competition went on with performances of beautiful Igbo ladies dancing, singing, and posing to be the winner. But when it came time to announce the winner, the villagers started to grow suspicious. "Where is the white man who is supposed to take the winner abroad?" Adobe asked, looking around nervously. As soon as the crowd realized that the so-called white man was no more than a village albino in disguise, chaos erupted. "Esther, you have fooled us," Chinyere shouted. The village ladies, furious that their dreams of modeling for Gucci was not a reality, became violent and they attacked Esther, slapping her black and blue. Esther was rushed to the village clinic because the girls almost beat her into a coma. Esther's mother, Mama Esther, visited her at the clinic, arms crossed and shaking her head. She said to her daughter, "Esther, I warned you. Stop all these nonsense ways of raising money for rubbish BBL surgery. Accept yourself for who you are, my daughter. You don't need to be doing Brazilian butt lift or any of these crazy things." Esther's father, standing beside his wife, said to his daughter, "When I married your mother, it wasn't because of a big backside. It's about true love, my daughter," he said calmly, and added, "Return all the money those girls paid you for the so-called beauty pageant and focus on making your life better." Esther, after she was discharged from the hospital, returned all the money she had raised, but her thoughts were still consumed with her plan. Despite all the chaos, she was more determined than ever. She needed that BBL surgery, and she was going to raise the money to get it, no matter what it took. Esther, still recovering from the failure of her beauty pageant scheme, knew she had to come up with something even more outrageous. After all, the dream of a big backside and Lagos wealth was still alive in her heart, and failure was not an option. 3 months passed by and Esther came up with an awesome plan. After her earlier scams left some of the villagers suspicious of her antics, she needed a credible frontman to pull off her latest con. And who better than Okonkwo, the village loan shark, known for squeezing every last drop from anyone who borrowed money from him. One sunny afternoon, Esther approached Okonkwo with a bright smile and said, "Okonkwo, I need a loan of 10,000 naira urgently. But don't worry, in 2 weeks, I'll return 15,000 naira. It's a small thing." Okonkwo, with his sharp eyes, nodded. "Ah, a 50% in 2 weeks?" he asked. "Wow, my kind of business." He handed her the money, fully expecting her to struggle with the payment. But to his surprise, just 1 week later, Esther returned not with 15,000 naira, but with 20,000 naira. Okonkwo's jaw dropped, and he asked her, "But you said 15,000 in 2 weeks, but here you are with 20,000 in just 1 week. Esther, how did you do it?" he asked her. Esther smiled, leaning in closer. "It's a farm investment, Uncle Okonkwo, a very profitable one. I plant today, I harvest tomorrow. If you want, I can bring you in. In fact, I can give you even more commission if you can get the villagers to invest too. But let's keep it between us. Do not tell anybody I am involved in this business." Now, Okonkwo, ever the businessman, was intrigued. He rubbed his hands together, eyes gleaming. "Esther, this sounds good. Very good," he said. The very next day, Okonkwo summoned his closest friends. He presented the investment like he was the front runner of the investment. "My people," he began, puffing out his chest, "I have found the future of wealth. You give me 10,000 naira today, and I'll give you back 15,000 naira in a week. Guarantee." Of course, his friends couldn't resist. They each handed over their money. And true to Esther's plan, they got their returns right on time. "The wealth is real," Papa Chidi, the village palm wine tapper, shouted in excitement as he clutched his earnings. "I will never be poor again," Mama Nkechi shouted, throwing her wrapper in the air. Soon, the entire village of Umuoka was buzzing with the news. Okonkwo, acting as the face of the business, became a local hero. Villagers lined up, handing over their life savings to invest in this mysterious farm scheme. Even old Papa Okafor, who had never believed in quick money and has never fallen for scam, joined in the investment. "This time is real," Papa Okafor muttered as he handed over his goods and 5,000 naira to Okonkwo. Everything seemed perfect until it wasn't. One fine morning, Okonkwo strolled confidently to Esther's compound to collect the next round of returns for the villagers. But when he arrived, the door was wide open, completely empty. Okonkwo scratched his head, peering inside. "Esther! Esther!" His voice echoed through the empty room. It hit him like a ton of bricks. She was gone, fled to Lagos with all the money, leaving nothing but dust and an old pair of slippers behind. The next day in the village square, Okonkwo stood in front of a furious mob. "Okonkwo, where is our money?" Mama Nkechi shouted, waving a broomstick threateningly. Papa Chidi, who had invested his palm wine business earnings, stomped his foot. "You promised us wealth. What are we supposed to eat now?" Okonkwo, sweating, held up his hands. "I didn't know. Esther tricked us all." Mama Nkechi, standing with her arms crossed, shook her head. "Ah, Okonkwo, you too? After that beauty pageant disgraced, you believed Esther again? She used you like a crayfish in pepper soup." Papa Okafor spat on the ground, bitter. "Even the devil must be laughing at us right now. So finally, I have been scammed." The villagers burst into a mixture of laughter and frustration as they realized they had been caught up in yet another of Esther's outrageous schemes. But this time, Even Okonkwo, the infamous loan shark, had been duped. As the crowd dispersed, Okonkwo muttered under his breath, "If ever I see Esther again, Lagos or not, I'll make sure she learns what high interest really means." And so, Esther escaped to Lagos with the money she needed for her Brazilian butt lift. Arriving in Lagos, Esther reunited with her cousins, Monica and Coco, who were thrilled to see her. "Esther, you finally made it. I knew you would get the money somehow," Monica said with a sly smile. Coco added, "Now let's get you that BBL." They introduced her to Dr. Blow, a shady, unlicensed surgeon operating out of a rundown clinic in the back streets of Mushin, Lagos. The doctor, a man on dreads and a permanently sweaty forehead, assured Esther that she was in an expert's hands. "You will look like a Lagos celebrity when I'm done with you," Dr. Blow boasted. The surgery itself was a nightmare. Esther woke up feeling sore and groggy, her backside heavily bandaged. The doctor, still sweating profusely, was standing beside her bed and said, "Look at yourself, my dear. You are a masterpiece." Esther stared into the mirror and gasped. Her new backside was indeed massive, but something didn't seem right. It looked too big and slightly lopsided. "Ah, doctor, why does one side look heavier than the other?" Esther asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Blow shrugged. "It's normal. Just give it time. It will settle." Trusting him, Esther hobbled out of the clinic, ready to conquer Lagos with her new body. But as soon as she began mingling in the city, strange things started happening. The first incident occurred when Esther went on a date with a rich client, a businessman simply called Chief. As they sat in an expensive restaurant, sipping wine, Esther's backside began to shake uncontrollably. Chief, startled, stared at her. "Esther, what is going on? Are you dancing or what?" Esther's face flushed with embarrassment as she tried to sit still, but her backside had a mind of its own, vibrating like it was possessed. I don't know, Chief. Maybe it's just the chair." As the shaking intensified, Esther excused herself and rushed to the convenience. But once inside, disaster struck. When she sat on the toilet seat, her big backside began to inflate. Slowly at first, then rapidly, like a balloon being filled with air. "My goodness," Esther screamed. She got up from the toilet seat and ran towards the toilet door. But her now inflated backside could not pass through the narrow toilet door. A nearby cleaner heard her struggles and burst into the toilet. "Madam, what is happening here?" Esther, completely embarrassed, shouted, "Help me, my butt is growing." The cleaner, too shocked to move, simply stared at the sight of Esther's backside, ballooning out of control. Finally, after much struggling and sweating, Esther managed to wriggle free. Esther, still trying to embrace her new city life, was a walking disaster, literally. After the botched surgery, her backside was no longer just big, it was completely lopsided. The left cheek of her buttocks had somehow inflated more than the right, making her walk with a weird, exaggerated limp. Her cousins, Monica and Coco, who had initially cheered her on, couldn't help but burst into laughter every time they saw her. "Esther, come and see how you are walking," Monica cackled one evening, clutching her stomach as tears rolled down her cheeks. Coco, barely able to contain herself, added, "With one cheek bigger than the other, you look like someone carrying half a bag of rice on one side. How do you even balance?" Esther now realized that her cousins had deceived her, and the huge money she paid for the surgery was a deal struck by the fake doctor, Dr. Blue, and her wicked cousins to scam her of her money, and they now gave her fake Brazilian butt lift. As if the lopsided walking wasn't enough, Esther had developed another humiliating side effect: an unbearable itch. On her inflated backside, it was like 1,000 ants has taken up residence, and no amount of scratching could provide relief. One afternoon, while trying to impress some Lagos rich men at a posh event, the itch struck with a vengeance. Esther, dressed in a tight red dress that showed off her big backside, was chatting up a man in an expensive suit when her left buttocks began to itch furiously. At first, she tried to resist, biting her lip and shifting awkwardly from foot to foot, hoping the sensation would pass. But the itch only intensified, and soon she couldn't take it anymore. Without thinking, she reached behind her and began scratching vigorously. The man she was speaking to raised an eyebrow. "Are you okay?" he asked. Esther, trying to keep her composure, smiled through her gritted teeth. "Oh yes, I'm just adjusting my dress." But it wasn't long before the scratching became frantic. She was no longer adjusting anything. She was scratching hard at her backside like a mad cat. Her wig nearly fell off from the effort. She didn't care. She needed to scratch. With one final aggressive scratch, Esther heard a strange hissing sound followed by a loud pop. Her buttocks exploded right there in front of the man and other people at the venue, releasing a puff of air and water like a deflating balloon. The man's jaw dropped as he stared in horror. Did your butt just literally explode?" he asked, shocked. Before he could finish his sentence, Esther bolted for the door, one hand clutching her deflated backside and the other hand trying to hold her dignity together. Back in the village, news of Esther's Lagos disaster had spread like wildfire. Esther had used all her money to have the implants removed, and she could not afford to stay in Lagos and had to return to the village of Umuoka. "Esther, welcome back," called out Mama Nkechi, barely suppressing a laugh. "We heard Lagos gave you one big butt cheek and one small one." Papa Chidi added with a grin, "At least now that you are back, let's see if there is hope of you paying us our money." Esther blushed because even she couldn't help but laugh. The absurdity of it all was just too much to deny. She had left the village in pursuit of something she thought would make her happy, only to end up more miserable than before. A village town hall meeting was organized where Esther admitted that she had fronted Okonkwo to defraud the villagers, and she apologized. Papa Okafor stood up in the meeting, and to everyone's surprise, he said, "I don't think you owe us anything, Esther. We were greedy. That was why we fell for the scam. We deserve what we got, and you deserve what you got too, Esther, because I heard that Lagos was a disaster for you, and that is what happens when you steal people's money." Papa Okafor continued and said, "I have talked to Okonkwo to forgive you because he was threatening to deal with you, and I explained that it was our greed that blinded us. You are our daughter. I know your father. He is a gentle man. You are forgiven. Go and sin no more." The people of Umuoka supported Papa Okafor, and Esther was allowed to live among her people. She realized that all the scheming, lying, and hustling had gotten her nothing but trouble and one very public explosion of disgrace. In the days that followed, Esther gradually came to accept herself for who she was. She no longer needed city glamour or fake big backside to feel worthy. The villagers teased her gently about her Lagos misadventures, but they welcomed her back with open arms. Esther had learned from her mistakes, and she now knows that true beauty wasn't about the size of her backside. It was about being comfortable in her own skin. And so, Esther found peace, not in the bright lights of Lagos, but in the simple joy of self-acceptance.